Hi, welcome to Practical Apologetics, where we give clear answers to everyday Christians with real questions. I'm Kenneth Willis. In the last two episodes, we asked an important question: is God real? And we looked at the philosophical and scientific arguments. We concluded that belief in God isn't blind faith, it's reasonable. Now the next question is obvious. If God exists, has He spoken? And if so, how? It's reasonable that a personal, moral creator would communicate. So today we're asking, is the Bible reliable? Not, is it inspiring? Not, is it meaningful to people? Is it historically reliable? For this episode, I'm drawing from several works, including The New Testament Documents, Are They Reliable? By F. Bruce, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh and Sean McDowell, Reasonable Faith by William Lane Craig, and I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Norman Geisler and Frank Turek. I'll list those in the description if you'd like to dig further. Some critics call the Bible a book of fairy tales. Let's see if that holds up. We're going to look at three things: archaeology, textual preservation, and internal unity. Let's start with archaeology. If the Bible were mythology, we wouldn't expect to find archaeological evidence supporting it. But over the last 150 years, the pattern has been the opposite. Archaeology has repeatedly confirmed the people, the places, and political details mentioned throughout the Old and New Testament. For example, for a long time, some critics claim King David was merely a legend. Then, in 1993, the Tel Dan Inscription was discovered in Israel. This 9th century BC stone inscription refers to the House of David. That's an external reference to a real Davidic dynasty. The Bible placed David in history. Archaeology confirmed he belonged to an actual royal line. Again, for years, critics also claimed the book of Daniel contained a historical error. Daniel chapter 5 names Belshazzar as king of Babylon, but classical sources available to 18th and 19th century scholars only mentioned Nabonidus as the last king. So critics concluded that the author of the book of Daniel had made a mistake. Then archaeology intervened. In the mid-1800s, clay inscriptions known as the Nabonidus Cylinders were discovered at the ancient site of Ur in modern-day Iraq, in the region of ancient Babylon. These inscriptions refer to Belshazzar, identified as the son of Nabonidus. Further records showed that Nabonidus spent long periods away from Babylon, leaving Belshazzar ruling in his place as co-regent. That explains something interesting in Daniel chapter 5, verse 29. In that verse, Belshazzar offers to make Daniel the third ruler in the kingdom. Why third? Because Nabonidus was first, Belshazzar ruled second. The highest rank that Belshazzar could grant was third. What critics once claimed was a historical confusion turned out to be a very precise political detail. Another example. In 1961, an inscription was discovered in Caesarea Maritima. It bears the name Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judah. Luke chapter 3 verse 1 places Judea, where Jesus lived and ministered, under the authority of Pontius Pilate. That's not mythical language, that's confirmed Roman administration. Then there's the pool of Bethesda mentioned in John chapter 5. John describes a pool with 5 porticos. For years, critics said that detail was symbolic or invented. Then, in 1888, excavation uncovered a pool complex matching that description. This means that the author of the book of John knew the geography of pre-70 AD Jerusalem. That's what historians look for: accurate detail. Luke's precision goes even further. He uses specific political titles like tetrarch, proconsul, and politarch. Those titles varied by region and time period. In the late 1800s, British archaeologist and historian Sir William Ramsay set out to test Luke's accuracy. He approached the New Testament skeptically. After years of studying and excavating in the region, Ramsay concluded that Luke was, in his words, a historian of the first rank. That's not a preacher talking. That's a trained historian/archaeologist. And then there's this statement from respected Jewish archaeologist Nelson Glueck. It may be stated categorically that no archaeological discovery has ever controverted a biblical reference. Not from a Christian, not from a pastor, from an archaeologist. Remember, the common accusation from critics is that the Bible collapses under historical investigation, that it's full of myths, but the consistent pattern has been the opposite. If a document consistently proves accurate in small, ordinary, unimportant historical matters, that builds confidence in its overall reliability when it comes to things that are more important. So, archaeology supports its historical reliability, but critics have other concerns. How do we know the text hasn't changed over time? Many claim that it has done exactly that. If we're going to claim the Bible is reliable, we have to have an answer for that. Do we actually have what was originally written? Let's start with the Old Testament. In 1947, what are known as the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered by a sheep herder in clay jars in a cave near the Dead Sea, hence the name. These manuscripts date back to around 200 BC. Before that discovery, our oldest complete Hebrew manuscripts were from about 1,000 years after that. When scholars compared them, the consistency was remarkable. Minor spelling differences, copying variations, like words in a different order, etc. But the message remained almost exactly the same. For example, in the scrolls was discovered a complete book of Isaiah, and it was almost word for word the same as ones written 1,000 years later. Now the New Testament. We have over 5,800 Greek manuscripts. That doesn't include early translations. No other ancient work comes close. For example, no one questions that Socrates, Alexander the Great, and Genghis Khan existed. However, for those individuals, we only have about 200 manuscripts about Socrates, all written in 9 AD and later, about 1,200 years after his death. We only have about 40 total manuscripts regarding Alexander the Great, all written at around 1,200 to 14 years after his death. There's only one surviving ancient biography of Genghis Khan, and it was written centuries after his death. In contrast, it is widely accepted that the Gospel of John was written about 60 years after the crucifixion of Jesus. New Testament scholar Daniel Wallace puts it simply. The New Testament is by far the best attested document of the ancient world. Yes, there are variants. That's expected when thousands of copies are made by hand. But the vast majority of these variants are minor. Spelling differences, word order changes, small scribal slips. No core Christian doctrine depends on a disputed text. And because we have so many manuscripts from regions spanning from Africa to Asia, scholars can compare them and reconstruct the originals with a very high degree of confidence. Ironically, the abundance of manuscripts strengthens confidence rather than weakening it. Another common statement is this: the Bible is just a bunch of stories written by men. The Bible isn't one book written at one time. It's 66 books, written by approximately 40 different authors, written over roughly 1,500 years, by kings, by prophets, shepherds, fishermen, tax collectors, men from different cultures, living in different times in history, writing in different languages, living in different geographical locations. And yet it tells one coherent story: the creation of all things, the fall of humanity, the redemption of humanity through Christ, and the restoration of all creation. From Genesis to Revelation, there's only one consistent narrative. That kind of unity across that span of time isn't ordinary. It's extraordinary. So let's review what we've learned. Archaeology supports the Bible's historical reliability. The manuscript evidence shows the Bible's careful preservation. And across centuries, cultures, languages, and geographical locations, the Bible presents a unified message. That doesn't force anyone to believe, but it does mean the Bible shouldn't honestly be dismissed as a book of fairy tales or simply myths. It's rooted in real history, and it deserves to be taken seriously. Next episode, we'll take the next step and examine the central figure of the New Testament, and really the entire Bible, Jesus of Nazareth, and we'll ask a straightforward historical question. Did Jesus really exist? Remember, faith isn't believing without evidence. It's trusting where the evidence leads. Join us next time on Practical Apologetics.